Ken Weller here with New Tech Inventors. Well, the day's finally coming. Tomorrow's the day that we plan to fire up the print farm here and get all of these printers running. It's been a little bit over 2 months now since we started this project. So a lot of work's gone into it. I know a lot of you out there have followed me along this path. I appreciate your support and comments and helpful hints along the way. But we're finally reaching that point. Now, as you can see, we're going through and installing the final modified filament holders and connecting the wires, getting all of the printers wired into their appropriate terminal strip and plugged into its allotted circuit. We're going to be doing quite a bit of stuff in this video today as far as the prep work that's involved in setting these printers up, getting them aligned, making sure everything's working, and getting the beds leveled and so forth. Then hopefully tomorrow we'll do a couple final tweakings and be able to get them running. We have 3 printers right now that have a little problem with their automatic leveling sensor. I'm going to see if I can work that out. But other than that, we're ready to go. Okay, as you can see, we've got all of our Anets assembled and wired up. We've just fired them up, and they all have a preheated bed. We're only preheating the bed. We don't want to preheat the nozzle at this time. The nozzle doesn't draw that much power, but we're checking to see what our average draw is. On phase 2, it looks like we're running between 2 and 11 amps. Just depending on when they cycle. But like I said, and then on phase 1, it looks like it's drawing between 3 and maybe 7 amps. Those were the first 2 bays, so they've had a little more time to get up to temperature. That's not too bad. That's a total of about 10 amps for all 24 printers combined. And as you can see, we've set out our PLA that we're going to be using. And some of these spools have been opened and used, so we'll be running those as well as some new ones. This test is just basically to make sure that the beds are all heating up good and that we don't have any power problems. Okay, I picked one of our printers here and I actually put the chip in, and we're going to be printing a test here of the print job we'll be running on all printers tomorrow. Okay, our parts have finished printing and they just come right off. Okay. Okay, here are the 3 parts that we took off the printer, and we'll remove this brim Again, we didn't have to have it, but sometimes on the first go round on the glass bed, I'll put it on there just to ensure adhesion. These parts are for the helping hand, and this particular part right here is the locking mechanism that goes on the powered base of the helping hand to hold the attachments in. This is one of the attachments. This is actually a blank filler attachment. And this little piece right here also goes on the powered base of the helping hand. And it's a cover for the back of the powered base. It's a cover that goes over the electronics. So those are the three parts that we're test printing. We'll actually be able to use them if they calibrate all right. I'm going to check calibration on them and make sure they work. Yeah, I do have all of the print jobs on these chips here. So we'll be loading these into the printers and getting the software loaded. I'll probably go ahead, put these chips in this evening, and then make sure that when I put them in, that the part or the job I'm wanting to print comes up on the menu here, and just have everything ready. So tomorrow when I come down here, all I have to do is go down the row and load the filament, and then preheat the nozzles. And I'll do those probably 2 at a time, preheating the nozzles and loading the filament. And then once the filament's loaded into the nozzles, we'll probably go behind ourselves and turn the heat back off to the nozzle till we get everything loaded. And then once we're ready to go, then we'll go ahead and try to start them as consecutively as possible, as quickly as we can go down the line, and start the print jobs. And all the while we'll be monitoring the power that it's drawing, just out of curiosity mainly. We know it's going to be a minimal amount, and based on temperatures and everything, it looks like we're going to be between 10 and 12 amps when we're operating. However, I won't be surprised if it gets up higher than that, maybe as high as 15 amps, because once these printers are operating, we are going to have a little more heat requirement in the nozzle as we're passing a cool filament into it. So I think the nozzles will be drawing a little more power, and that may add about another amp or two to our overall power draw. But it's going to be exciting to see all of these printers chugging away. I've got to go through and on these ET4Xs, the ones that have the blue trim, I have to check the bed level on all of those. So I'm going to cut off the camera and go ahead and do a little more work here, testing and getting ready for tomorrow, when we hope to see these little puppies running. Okay, wanted to step in here and just mention to you that the remaining 30 some odd minutes of this video go into a lot of detail on the ET4X, checking it out, things to check, adjustments to make, and so forth. And for a lot of you that already know all of this stuff, it may not be something you'd want to watch, but I know there are a lot of people out there that are just starting, and they may find some helpful tips or ideas, or see how I do it anyway, and it may be something that they can use. So that's why I've included that in the video. I'm going to go ahead and get this video finished and try to get it posted, because tomorrow I've got a big day. We're going to really try to finish up the odds and ends and get those printers fired up and get a video out to you. So thanks a whole lot for watching, and check out the rest of the video if you have the time. Thanks. Okay, we have one of our ET4X printers here that we assembled and had on the shelf. We pulled it off. We're going to take all 24 printers one at a time off the shelf, bring it over here, and do a pre-test before we start our first print jobs on them. This printer's never been printed on before, but I'm going to go through and show you some of the things that I do when I first, before I first start printing on one of these printers. So, first thing I want to do is I'll bring this, I'm using a glass bed, and I'll tighten these screws down until these springs are fully compressed. And the reason I'm doing this is because since this is not an automatic bed leveling printer, this is a manual leveling printer, I want to make sure that when I level this bed that I have good spring tension. I don't want them extended out and then have to extend them out to where they're really loose and where the bed's spongy, because then you can get some variations in your adhesion. So they're all the way tightened down now. Now I'll back them off about 10 quarter turns. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now they aren't tightened down all the way, but once I set this thing for leveling, I'll have just a little bit of clearance, so I'll back them off a little bit more, but that will still leave quite a bit of spring tension here. Okay, that's one thing. Now the other thing, turning the printer around here, we'll stay with the bed. These Anet printers are different. Some of them come with a metal strain relief that clamps onto the wire right here at this point, and you can make sure that's tightened down and it's good strain relief. Some of them just plug in like this. There are a lot of printers out there that plug in. Now this, you know, this is going back and forth all the time, and so it's putting stress and everything on these wires as they're individually connected, and eventually it can break one of those wires loose in there and cause your heat bed not to function properly. So the first thing I want to do is a real simple strain relief, which is just some black electrical tape. And I take this black electrical tape and run it around the connector there at the tip, and then I work my way back until I get onto the main insulation of the wire, and then I go back one more time and then I cut that off. Now, this may not be the neatest job in the world, but it's definitely an improvement over what we had, because now that's going to minimize the flexing of those individual wires. Okay, snap that on. Another thing too, this wire coming out of here, we want to make sure that when it travels, that it's not going to catch on this over here. We don't want it going at an angle in the opposite direction. So you always want to kind of train it to fall over here to this side. Another thing, speaking of wires, the wire coming up here to this Z-axis motor, it has a lot of slack out here, but I always push all the excess wire down through the hole so there's nothing hanging up here that might catch on something. Same thing here, you've got this wire sticking up. Go ahead and push it down through the hole and get it out of the way so it's nothing that can catch on there. So those are a few of the things there. Okay, now while we're with the bed, another thing we're going to do is pull this thing back, and let's look at our belt tension here. Okay, I can already tell I can push it over there and touch the other belt without much effort. So I don't have enough tension on that. So what you want to do is come back. There are 4 screws on this Y-axis motor, and you loosen those up, then you can pull this back and you can see it adjusts the tension on that. So I'm going to pull it back to where I think it probably would be about right, and we're going to check. Now let's run back to the front and check. Oh, that's a lot better. Now I have to really use force to touch the other belt, but my instincts tell me they could still use just a little more tension because it's a brand new belt, and brand new belts will relax a little bit more after they run. Let's look at it again now. Yeah, that's a lot better. That feels pretty good. So you want to make sure you've got enough tension on that thing. It's a little hard to get too much tension. You have, if you're using your finger. Now if you use something else, a mechanical device to pry that thing back, you've got to be real careful, because if you get too much tension on it, it's going to wear faster, and also puts a strain on your motor and the bearings on your pulleys and everything. That feels good. Okay, sounds good. Another thing we want to check is to make sure we've got plenty of room for a wire so this can go all the way forward. Make sure it comes all the way back. Hits the limit switch without a problem. What I'm checking for now is looseness in the rollers, and they feel all right. There's just a slight movement there, but it takes some pressure to do it. So looks like the rollers on the bottom are tight enough running on the tracks here. Okay, that's pretty much it for the bed right now. Now we're going to come over here and check our connections. Make sure that all of these connections are good. Our strain relief is good here. Make sure that this tubing is in all the way. And then come back around. Well, while we're back here, this roller right here, try to turn it, and if it turns easily, or these outside, any of them turn very easily, then you may need to adjust that a little bit, but they seem to be pretty tight. Okay, now let's go back around to the front. I'm going to lower this a little bit, get my bed back out of the way, take my caliper here, turn it on, and what I do is just come down this side, touches. I've got 14.64 millimeters there, and then I come over to the other side and I've got 14.84, so about 0.1 millimeter difference in level, in this being level with the base. Now on dual Z-axis motors you have to level this. On these, normally you don't, but I always check it to make sure it's close, and 0.1 millimeters is close, plenty close. But if it's off like 2 millimeters, then what you can do is loosen up these screws that mount this bar to these two roller ends, and you can actually torque that a little bit and tighten them back down and get it in a closer alignment. But this one looks good. Now the other thing I'm going to do is check and make sure that I don't have any movement here. If I do, there's an adjustment on the rollers that will tighten these rollers up. But it looks like we're pretty smooth here. Now we're going to check. My belt is a little bit loose here, so let me tighten my belt up a little bit. And again, we loosen these 4 screws on the front of this thing, and just take our finger and pull that belt. If you can see here, this moves in and out, and you just put pressure on it so you can tighten these down, and then you check. That feels a lot better. So now I can go ahead and tighten these down, and you want to make sure they're good and tight. Another thing to remember is that after a brand new printer runs for several hours, and by several hours I mean after it's printed for about 24 hours or more, you'll probably want to come back and just feel these belts to make sure that they still have plenty of tension on them. So make sure these things are good and tight, because you don't want it loosening up on you. Okay, another thing to check is when this belt's put on, it clips to some slots and it can slide back and forth. I always like to look at that and see if it's lining up with my track, because I can move them. That one needs to slide out just a hair. So I try to get them lined up so the belt doesn't rub with the track. Same thing with this end here. You want to make sure that this thing lines up And this one looks to be a little bit off. So let me get my wrench here. Small wrench for that. You loosen these set screws up here, then look at the end of that, and that looks better. Then tighten them back up, make sure they're good and tight so it doesn't move on you. Okay, it looks like we're running smooth. If you hear a clicking sound or something, it could be where that belt's rubbing. I'm going to check the other end. Looks like it's lined up good. Okay, we've got that stuff taken care of. Around to the back again. This is taking a little bit longer than it usually takes me because I'm trying to talk and do something at the same time, and you know how hard that is on me. Okay, I check all these connections, check this cable, make sure it's locked in good, and that we want to check, and I don't know if I've already done, but we want to check, make sure these are down good and tight, because I have had a printer before where this one wasn't tight, and over time it loosened up and actually came loose, and then raw filament was just going out all over the place, wasn't even getting to the extruder. So yeah, make sure these are tight, these two connections on the end of this tube, and you look good there. I'm going to just make double sure that these set screws are good and tight. If you assemble the printer yourself, you don't have to go around and check every screw because you know you've gotten things tight. Okay, looks like we're in pretty good shape there. Now, coming back around to the front, you notice we have our modified spool holder that holds these wider spools of filament on here. And we've also moved this from the top to the side because with my limited vertical space on the shelves, to get 3 of them stacked, I didn't have room to have the filament up here, so I put it on the side. Now what this does, it does affect the vertical z-axis and limits that. And I'll show you when the z-axis is going up and you have the filament on there, filament's actually having to go up into this sensor. So this is about the maximum height that we can operate with this filament on the side like that. And if we check to see what that height is, it is just getting a close, it's about 115 millimeters. So I'd say 115, 120 millimeters is my maximum height that I want to operate at. And currently I don't have any parts that print that high or in excess of that height. So now we will let's see if there's anything else. I don't believe there's anything else, so we'll go ahead and plug the printer up, and it's time to do some other testing here. Turn power on. Okay, let's go in here and look at this thing. First of all, we'll go to settings and look at our settings. Want to go to home, and we'll home this printer. Okay, that's home. Now, on this printer, the way home is determined is by a limit switch back here on the back of the printer. I'm not sure if you can see it very well, but it's right above the Z-axis motor, and there's some adjustment screws there where we can adjust that limit switch. Now, when I was assembling the printer, I assembled it to the point where I normally set that Z-axis. Now I'm going to power off the printer, pull the bed forward, slide the head over, and just roughly look at that and see how much space I have there. It looks like I've got about 3 or 4 millimeters. So by the time I do my bed leveling, I should be all right. I've cut the power off for right now because I'm going to get this bed close to level. Pull this bed forward, move this over, take our leveling paper here, start loosening up these 2 front rollers. Now we'll go to the back. Start loosening these up. That one's okay. Bring it over here. Got plenty of friction right there. Come forward. A little too much. That's a little better. That's about right. That one feels about right. That one feels about right. That one feels good. Center feels good. Feels good. Okay. Okay, one other thing we're going to do is take these little silicone blankets, as I call them. They're kind of a heat blanket. They'll go around your hot end and help insulate it. Now they do 2 things. They not only help insulate it and keep your blower or air that's being blown on your filament to cool it from fluctuating the temperature or taking heat away from this hot end, but it also, if your filament's coming out Sometimes it curls up. Sometimes it'll curl up and attach itself to your hot end. And this heating block here, and filament will build up on it, and all kinds of problems can arise from that. So this helps because the filament, you don't have problems with it melting and adhering to this. So it does two jobs. Now on these Anet ET4X printers, the corner of this block is real close to the bracket for this bottom roller, and they won't fit over it. So I have to notch the corner out like you see here. And once we notch that corner out, then we can put that thing up on there, and as you can see, we're good to go.